So, a cinematic leak has been going around the community for about a week now that talks about Lordran, Alexstrasza, Delran returning back to the ground and Khadgar overseeing it, and at the end, a presentation of the Dragon Isles. There are allegedly also some shots of Tyrande, some talks about the Night Elves restoration, Darnassus, and Alexstrasza, the dragon aspect of life, cleansing the blight over Tirisfal, similar to what the dragons had done at the Vradgate. Now, let's be real, this could be just total BS, and more than likely it is, as the actual cinematic will almost certainly come up in about 4 days time. But I gotta say, when you combine this with some previous leaks, some 9.2.5 stuff, it actually makes sense and it totally checks out. So what are these WoW Dragonflight cinematic leaks? You have definitely heard about Raid Shadow Legends, but do you know it is the 3rd anniversary, which means it's a better time than ever to start playing, which you can do with my link in the description or the QR code. As it is the 3rd anniversary, there are 3 best reasons to play Raid. One is the countless champions you can collect, second is the various modes from PvP to PvE and campaigns, and the third reason is the actual challenges, as when things get tough, you really need to strategize. What I like about Raid is that you can access it both through your mobile phone and PC, which means it is always with you, and as the anniversary is happening right now, a bunch of new content is being added, as well as a full month of special events and tournaments, which means a ton of rewards as well. As it's never been a better time to start, if you use my link or scan the QR code, all new players will get a free starter pack worth almost $40 with free champions Misericord, Tiger Soul, and Romero, 10 Magic Force and Spirit XP brews, and on top of all of that, all new players and existing ones will get gifts worth $25. Just enter the promo code 3YearsRaid as you see right on the screen. See you in game. Before we start, let's talk about the actual legitimacy of this, and let's be real, it isn't that great. Literally just a forum leak, so I know you guys are gonna be posting this aged like milk in about 4 days time, but this is made before the next WoW expansion was released, so I gotta say it makes the most amount of sense with what we have to work with right now at this point in time. Plus the cinematic is definitely finished by this point, so it is totally possible that someone has actually seen it. Allegedly, the cinematic is 3 minutes and 37 seconds long, and it is a bit shorter when compared to the Shadowlands and the BFA one, and it is kinda symbolical because the expansion would be called Dragonflight, as we have seen by the name, so the cinematic centers over the dragons flying, in particular Alexstrasza flying into various zones, talking about renewal, new life, and finally reaching their apparently long-lost homeland, the Dragon Isles. Allegedly, the opening shot is over the ruins of Lordran, that huge scar that is running across most of Tirisfal, the scar of the siege of Lordran, the crazy war started by Sylvanas and the Jailer, and just overall, there is this sense of tragedy with Lordran, first destroyed by the Scourge with the entire artist thing, then taken over by the Undead, and now destroyed yet again. Then Alexstrasza, who seems to be at the center of this cinematic, says, "War has left its scars upon this world, we have lost so much," while the shot now changes to crumbling Darnassus that is covered in ashes with Night Elven wisps just running around. This, of course, makes sense as Lordran and Darnassus are the 2 biggest tragedies of the war that happened quite recently, and still we never really recovered from it. We don't really know what is the state of these zones, as it is not fully updated in the game, so it totally makes sense that they would be playing around with this in the next expansion. Additionally, on top of this leak, there have legit been some updates to Tirisfal and this scar, so it isn't out of the question that this could totally be a part of the next expansion. Apparently now in the cinematic, the shot changes to Tyrande standing in what remains of the Temple of the Moon, looking at the moon, symbolizing Elune, and Alexstrasza says, "But even in darkness, there is light." And now we see a tear coming down Tyrande's face, and as the tear drops to the ground, the scene transitions to Mount Hyjal, completely lush greenery, flowers, and a new Night Elven settlement, with the mood of the cinematic changing from tragedy, sadness, destruction, and war to hope, rebuilding, and a new bright future. Now, I want to cut it off here a bit to say that while this does sound cool, it is actually supported in the lore. I mean, I know this is probably just some person making it up, but there is some background behind this. If you watched my previous video, we have data mined some really cool stuff from 9.2.5 that strongly hints at the renewal of either Teldrassil or a New World 3, as we found some sort of a wild seed of Ardenweald with a new encrypted Tyrande model, and apparently a future in-game cinematic called the Queen's Gift, more than likely referring to the Winter Queen returning the favor back to us or back to her sister Elune. Elune. It even makes sense as Sylvanas, by saving Night Elven souls, she's more than likely shuffling them to Ardenweald, which means that there will be new anima, a new infusion added to this afterlife realm, and it is possible that these new souls could be reborn again on Azeroth, very similar to the Wild Gods and that entire process. Previously, I was almost certain this would be new Teldrassil, but as this cinematic leak mentions a shot over Mount Hyjal, it could mean Hyjal could be significantly empowered by this seed, and this could become like a new settlement, possibly maybe a new Darnassus could be created here by the Night Elves, like Mount Hyjal could once again become the actual center of Night Elven culture. So this 9.2.5 stuff is also totally in line with the Elune's talk about renewal, Sylvanas' punishment as was described by the novel and that in-game cinematic, and why Tyrande decided to abandon revenge so quickly. It kinda makes a bit more sense. Maybe they can actually revive the Night Elven civilization, and we might be seeing that in the next expansion. But I digress, this is a whole topic on its own. I have an entire video on this if you want to check it out, but here is what the rest of the cinematic leak says. So after Mount Hyjal, the camera pans to multiple zones, one of them being Silvermoon, and this is also in line with other WoW Dragonflight leaks that talk about 6 alleged zones, one of them being Quel'Thalas, Balor, Goblin zones, and a whole bunch of other stuff. All of these could actually tie in with renewal theme of the expansion, as Night Elves need to renew after all this destruction, Blood Elves need to do the same. Really, it is about time for the Blood Elves. Goblins as well, as they lost their homeland. Really, the entirety of Azeroth is just filled with scars that need to be healed. Additionally, with Silvermoon and Quel'Thalas, we have an entire storyline with the Scourge invading and big hints that happen in 9.2.5, so this whole Blood Elven Kingdom could be getting a big update in the next expansion. So with the cinematic now, Alexstrasza, the aspect of life and renewal, says there is hope, and now the camera pans to Dalaran returning back to the ground after being up in the air for so long, and after fighting the Scourge and the Legion and just enduring all this destruction together with Azeroth, and now Khadgar is overseeing the landing of the fabled Mage City. This is also totally in line with the recent Shadowlands stuff and the other leaks. It was said that Dalaran would be a new hub by these leaks, and this makes sense as it is in North and Eastern Kingdoms where the expansion might be based, and we have actually seen Khadgar show up quite recently in the Shadowlands in Oribos, which I don't really think is just a pure coincidence. Then Alexstrasza says the future is bright as red dragons fly over Lordaeron and cleanse the Blight in the same manner they did back in Wrath of the Lich King with the entire Bolvar cinematic. Then the camera zooms out when Alexstrasza transforms into humanoid form, looks into the distance over the mountains, and then takes to the skies once again as a dragon. She then pushes through the clouds, and suddenly a new massive floating continent uncovers. The red dragon dives over the floating isles, snowy mountain peaks, enormous city made of glass, and she says, "This is our home, where we belong." Then the cinematic shows vast expanse of lands, mountains, forests, towers, and she says, continuing the sentence like this is where we belong, she continues, "On Azeroth." And then the WoW Dragonflight logo comes up. Now, let's be real, it is entirely possible, and actually more than likely that this is going to be complete BS, like someone's fanfiction. Like, we have never actually gotten a full-on leak like this that turned out to be completely true. For example, Warlords of Draenor was sort of leaked. With Shadowlands, we got some artwork that was leaked, but I doubt someone is going to be 100% correct in regards to the next expansion in this cinematic, so it is possible that this person just followed what was up to date and just crafted this fiction. However, overall, with all this stuff, I gotta say this 100% makes quite a bit of sense. We've had war after war after war non-stop for decades, and maybe it is finally time for renewal, or at least a theme around it while the war still happens. Alexstrasza was on that leaked artwork, and Alexstrasza is the aspect of life, of renewal, of hope. Pretty much all the people of Azeroth suffered immensely these past decades, and a lot of zones are really just begging to be restored, renewed, and recovered, and there is really so much room for this stuff. The main focus is with the Night Elves and the Forsaken that have lost their home quite recently. However, Lordaeron and the Plaguelands have been in a state of restoration since pretty much forever. Quel'Thalas has been in this stage since Warcraft 3. Then we have the Goblins that lost their homeland back in Cataclysm. We have the Gnomes that lost Gnomeregan and were apparently recovering it back in Cataclysm, but nothing came of that. We have the Gilneans, the Worgens still looking to return to their old homeland of Gilneas. To top this all, there have also been talks talks about the restoration and renewal in the Shadowlands by Elune, the Moon Goddess, and really, it is totally about time for so many of these playable races to actually just, take a breather, to take a break between fighting the Scourge, the Legion, the Warlords, the Dead Gods, and just rebuild their cities, restore their numbers, and just create new homes. Honestly, it would just be a perfect opportunity to also restore some old parts of the map, to actually bring us back to Azeroth, to create an Azeroth-focused expansion without crazy Xerath vortices, secrets, keys of the universe, hearts of Azeroth, and creation, and all this crazy stuff. In line with this restoration team, we could actually get player housing that would totally make sense with the entire expansion. I mean, if you're already building, it might just be the time for the players to finally settle down, no longer chase demons, but build their own piece of land. Aside from these crazy over-the-top leaks, there have actually been some hints for something like this happening with 9.2.5, some data mine stuff, and the recent stuff that happened in the Sylvanas novel and in the Shadowlands. However, the actual expansion, with more than likely the name Dragonflight, will be announced in less than 4 days, so maybe this video will actually just age like milk, but finally we'll find out what is really coming next in the Warcraft universe, as in my opinion, that this new expansion really needs to hit it big and just bring us some interesting storylines and features. Thank you for watching. Check out Volterra Silver Store by clicking on the screen, and check out the Runs Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.